So I went out and bought all these books on hypnosis. Tried everything that was in them. Tried just doing what they said. A lot of it was bunk and some of it worked pretty good. I had a kind of a laboratory because my neighbor on the other side was a single woman who was an agoraphobic. So she was always home. And she had every problem known to man. She suffered from horrible allergies. And I read in a book written in 1829 that you could cure allergies with hypnosis. So I said, okay, let's give it a try. So I went over in the middle of the summer and she had hay fever and her eyes were wheezing. And I put her in a trance. And this book in those days, they said you hold two fingers up like this. And you have people stare at the fingers. Stare, stare, stare. Look, 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 look till your eyes grow heavy and tired. And if you stare at anything long enough, your eyelids will grow heavy and tired. Right, I found out you can have people stare at a doorknob and it works just as well. I don't have to hold my arm up like that then. But apparently this guy, and they always referred to hypnotists as operators. And that didn't work for me. Operators are people you call on the phone and say, excuse me, I need to make a long distance call and I'm doing it wrong. Will you do it for me? The idea of a hypnotist being an operator didn't work for me. Say, because to me, you're not calling, it's not like calling your unconscious, calling your unconscious. You do lots and lots of things unconsciously. You unconsciously did the fear that you had.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's just a learned behavior, and if you can learn how these things go. Because you see, the trick is neural cortical pathways, any behavior you engage in that gets you in trouble. I have a whole booklet full of them somewhere. No, over there. But I don't want to go through each and every fear. I don't want to go through each of it. Some of you, for example, think about this. You know, there's some people who had a fear of failing, right? Well, you know, what is failure? Failure is by definition something that has a time limit. You fail to win a tennis match because the other guy gets more points than you quicker. But you don't fail to be a good tennis player till you stop practicing and stop watching people who are good. So you haven't really failed unless you set a time limit. See, that's why they have in the Olympics, they have time limits on everything. Put 8 guys up and you go, when you cross this line, the race is over. But you see, the races that you're running in your own life, if you measure them against yourself, the question is not whether you're as good as somebody else. The question is, are you getting better than you were? Because the human mind does this funny thing. Whenever the human mind compares things, if you say, how close am I to this? It measures the distance and typically will broaden it, because that's just the way the unconscious works. But if you look at where you were and see how much better you are, see, people go, well, you know, I'm not happy all the time. Well, they'll end up being less and less happy. But if you begin to notice that you feel better today than you felt yesterday, and tomorrow you feel better than you did, and you spend more of the time feeling better and begin to explore, because you see, what you made for yourself was a new feeling. Right? Now, if that's just a little tiny one, imagine what the great big ones are going to be. Because once you are unconscious, which now has an example of how to make good feelings, begins to do things, because it's not that you have the ability to overcome your fear of talking to audiences that interests me. It's your ability to change the direction from avoiding all of these plethora of problems to beginning to go inside and answer the question, how much pleasure and how much success can you stand? Because if you cut all of this stuff, I was amazed. Some of you had 3, 4, 5 pages, you know, typed out, clearly written, defined, categories like you wouldn't believe. I mean, you know, I was some of the most anal retentive stuff I've seen in years. Although you guys didn't live up to the best one. The best one I ever had was 26 pages. 26 pages of detail. Although somebody in here did come close. Because they listed all of the things that, you know, are on their wish list and all the things they wish they didn't have. And then they went through and each one and explained in a paragraph, you know, or so. So just so that I would understand exactly what they meant by things like I wouldn't get it when they said lack of confidence. You know how slow I am. They had to, and they went into the etiology of it too. That these things date back to when they were childhood. Well, if they lacked confidence now, I would assume they lacked confidence then. This works for me, because if they had learned to be confident, but you see, it's not just that you have confidence. I'd rather that you have confidence about what you know well. Because if you have confidence when you don't know things well, then you become an idiot of another form. There are many people in the field of NLP that fall into this category, that are constantly telling me what experts they are while they're missing most of what's going on. See, to me, the answers to things are always right there. That if you don't like the way something feels, feel different. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Right? But they don't tell you that. They go, oh, no, 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 no. See, there's deep hidden meaning inside of things. There are reasons why you're stuck where you are. Yes, because you're still doing it. Say, nobody told you if you want to start to relieve the tension in your back and where the pain is, you have to move differently. Because obviously, if the way you move and the way you sit creates pain, then I'd start sitting differently and moving differently. You know, if the food you eat, somebody said that they were getting sores inside of their mouth and stuff, the first thing I'd want to know is, what are you eating? You know, because if you're eating something that's causing this, otherwise you should get a blood scan, and I'm the wrong person to come to. I do draw blood now and then, but I don't analyze it afterwards. I think, because I mean, to me, if you have confidence, see, when they asked Tony Robbins what personal power was, he gave a description, and then they called me up because they wanted me to say bad things about Tony. And I like Tony. I think Tony does some good work, but I have a very different definition of personal power than he does. And I think that's one of the nice things on this planet, is that we can all think differently. If we all had to think the same thing, you know, then it would be like, you know, automaton land. They're trying to do that in the U.S. now. They want to universalize education so that every child in the U.S. learns exactly the same thing at the same time, at the same age. They have spelling words that we're all going to be able to spell exactly the same words, right? Won't that be nice, you know? And of course, they're strange words too, some of them, because they're not really words that any human being would normally use. You know, like if you don't live in Mississippi, how many times are you going to spell Mississippi? You know, why are they constantly, the whole time I was growing up, asking me to spell Mississippi? You know, and even the word Mississippi, you know, has its own embedded commands. And what did they check off on your schoolwork, all through school? Did they check off the stuff you did that was wonderful? Or did they get you to pay attention to everything you did that was wrong? So your unconscious learned to focus on what wasn't working. And the thing is if you take the best that you have and make it better and let it spread, and not worry about this stuff, you're going to be telling your unconscious what direction to go in. Are you going to go in avoiding misspelling words? Or are you going to do what I do? Bought me a computer with a button on it. And I press that button and it flashes and gives me a list. And even when I pick off the list, I still misspell it sometimes. It goes, nope, that's not it. Right? It couldn't be that word, you know. And then sometimes it gives me two spellings and I'll use one and then go into the dictionary and find out that's not the right one. You know, it's one of those things. It's, you know, there's different things cultural too. They spell things differently over here. I tried to do crossword puzzles over here. Forget that. You guys don't spell the words that get things. Plus you have all these little things that I guess are just very British, stuff I didn't know about. They asked about two names I was trying to figure out, and I had no idea who these people were. They said, and that was the hint, was these two names. You know, they said, the very famous, and they had these two names, and I had no idea, so I had to call Paul on the phone. I called Paul, and I said, have you ever heard of these names? And he said, oh, yes, they're two very famous comics. Right, and then I looked back, and I wrote comedy, and it fit in. You know, and I went, wow. I said, I never even heard of these guys. They're supposed to be famous. Right, well, they're famous if you were watching the BBC. But unfortunately, we don't have any educational TV in the U.S. It's not allowed. The only educational TV we get is Sesame Street, which means you can learn the alphabet and to count to 10, and that's it. You know, you can learn blue, green, and orange and the alphabet. And how can it take 5 million episodes to teach you the alphabet? I'm really confused about that. You can teach it much faster than that. You can show them the whole thing at once. Actually, it's just one picture if you have all the letters on it. Teach people to make it, then they can always read it. But then they have to attach sounds to it. That's the complicated part. Especially since in different languages, the same letter makes a different sound. I tried to learn some foreign languages by reading them, and that's not the way to do it. Because when you read them, phonetically especially, it comes out with a whole different meaning. You can really insult people that way. I was in India which is the land where they have a joyous amount of consonants. You know, it's like they got a vowel now and then. Sometimes they'll use the same vowel over and over again, but they think nothing about putting 5 or 6, 7 consonants together, one right after the other. And I kept trying to pronounce these things phonetically, and Hindu people are very polite. They would lean forward and look at me, and they would say, Dr. Bandler, that's pronounced. And then they would say something that I couldn't say if my life depended on it. I'd try and repeat it, but I couldn't get past the first 3 letters of the word. And then, of course, when I did a certification seminar in India, I thought it was funny when they came and asked me to go and do hypnosis in India. I thought, you know, here these people have been doing trance work for 40,000 years, you know, and I said, you know, I'd feel silly going to India and doing this. And they insisted that they were just as fucked up as everybody else. And that it wasn't fair that I wouldn't go to India. You know, they said, we have as large a middle class as the United States, and we have many more problems. You know, he said, we have just as many things. We worry too much, and they sent me a whole big list. And I said, well, you know, if you're as fucked up as we are, then I'll have no problem. But it turned out I didn't find that to be the case. I found that, you know, there's many things inside the Hindu culture, since it's been around so long, you know. I mean, it's like Christianity is like a flash in the pan compared to Hinduism. I mean, you know, not to mention the fact they have a lot more gods than all the rest of the religions put together. I mean, it's like a supermarket of new and used gods. And I found them more reliable, too, and more sensible. Because people don't talk about, do you believe in this? They say, do you know? Which tells me they've been talking to these people, and they're talking back better than the empty chair. For men, by the way, women, the nose, when you flare your nostrils, guys go like this, go, you know. Guys, I said, guys. Unless there's something about this I don't know. You ladies, the same thing will happen, but when you flare your nostrils, not twitch your nose, but flare your nostrils, the muscles right here, something else in your body will move simultaneously. Not like that. It's not your cheek muscles. It's the nostril muscles. So if you went like that, those muscles right there, when those muscles are on the motor cortex, are right next to your genitals. So when you move those, you'll feel your genitals move. It's fun. Yeah, but the weird part is that if a woman is attacked and a guy grabs her from behind, if she just leans forward and throws her head back and breaks his nose, that'll be the end of it. Because once you have a broken nose, you don't really start thinking, I'm going to have sex with somebody, you know, because it just ain't going to happen. You know, those things are too close to one another on the motor cortex. It's just like the other thing is that when you smile, one of the things that happens is just, even if you're not happy, if you just smile like that, just do it 3 times, go. Like that. What happens is serotonin is released into your bloodstream, because on the motor cortex, the thing that releases serotonin is right next to the muscles in the corner of your mouth. And it cools your brain down about 1 degree, and it'll make it so you don't get jet lag nearly as bad. It's one of those things where things are connected together simply by the fact that they're next to one another in location. It's just like if you laugh, even if nothing is funny, if you do deep laughs where you go, ha 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 ha, try it. Try it again. If you pay attention to your body right now, you'll begin to feel that your consciousness is altering. Because the activity of producing that diaphragm laugh also releases endomorphines into your system, the free drugs of life, as we like to call them. Now, the thing about altering your state of consciousness that's important is that if you want to change your mind, the easiest way to do it is in an altered state. That's why people always say you're going to look back and laugh. Because once you learn about something, you start laughing about it. And that's why when you came up here and you started thinking about it, suddenly it became funny. Now, if you think about all the fear that you used to have, and you think about how easy it was to change it, you have 2 choices. One, you can get pissed off about it, in which case you get to go back and do it again. Right? You know that thing on the game board where it goes, go back to go, do not pass, that thing, you know. That's what regret is, that's what anger is, that's what all those stupid things. It's bad enough to make a mistake, but if people have regret and you feel guilt, then they'll probably do it again. There was somebody on their chart that felt guilty because one of their relatives was not physically well formed as they were. And the one thing I want to tell you is that you were not their parent. You are feeling guilty about, having a better chance than other people. One thing I learned pushing, my wife got a very serious disease a few years ago, and she was in a wheelchair. And of course, the doctors were very helpful. They said things to her, because at first she was paralyzed from the neck down. And it's another thing. It's also a disease called E-trans myelitis. That trans keeps popping up everywhere, doesn't it? But when I was pushing her around in a wheelchair and she couldn't do things for herself, and I was amazed at how many of the medical people kept saying things like they said in front of her, only once, because I was there. This guy said, well, he said, you may get back some movement, but, it's unlikely that you'll ever walk again. So I turned around and I kneed the doctor in the groin as hard as I could. And he doubled over because I can knee pretty good in the groin. I've had some experience with this. I grew up in Chinatown in San Francisco. And there weren't enough Jews to have a gang, so I hung out with the Chinese, That was just an economical thing to do at the time. It's kind of hard to have a gang when there was only 2 of us, It's like, there'd be like 40 of them and 2 of us, and all we could do is go, you're going to feel really bad about beating us up. Just think, years from now, you're going to have to go through therapy about this. But one of the things is when this doctor doubled over and he hit the floor and he went, what's the matter with me? And I said, it's not me that's on the floor. I said, but look, you were giving my wife bad hypnotic suggestions. And I said, I simply don't stand for that. I consider that just like you might as well have slapped her. I said, here she is, she's drugged out of her mind on all these fucking pain medication, and you come in and start giving her bad suggestions. And I said, and I'll bet you your penis, you're wrong. And he's in deep trouble because my wife hasn't used a wheelchair in 4 months. We just haven't been back to the US yet, but I'm going to visit him. And when I walk in with my wife, he's going to really be afraid. I'll bet you anything he breaks out in a dead run. But he doesn't understand it's not me that's going to hurt it, it's him. Because I always say, if you're going to act impotent, you're going to be impotent. That's the thing. Because people can't know what's impossible. You can only know what's possible. See, you can't know, like people say, well, I can't feel sure of myself. And I always go, are you certain? You see the paradox in that? People tell me, that they can't stand up for themselves. They can't say no. I can't say no to people. I just am a doormat. And I look at them and I go, say no to me. And they go, no, I can't do that. I had one person, I said, what would happen if you said no to people? And they said, well, they might drop dead. And then they told me this terrible story about how they told their father no, that they wouldn't stay home with them. And then they went out and they came back and their father was died of a heart attack with his hand 6 inches from the phone, with a big scotch bottle in the other hand too, by the way. So apparently he drunk himself into a frenzy, got angry enough that he managed to give himself a coronary. But I'm sure he wasn't angry about the fact that his daughter didn't stay home to dial the phone for him. But she had built it into a big thing because she had been in therapy for, get this, 23 years. That's like life in prison, if you ask me. What was the sentence for making this mistake? They sent her to therapy. What did therapists do? They said, well, you have a lot of guilt. Let's install this in people. You have tremendous guilt that's building up over the years. This could ruin your life. Great commands. I don't think so. Because when I met her, I said, look, tell me no. And she said, no, I can't do that. And I just dropped dead on the floor, fell over. It lowered my heart rate down. She went up and felt I had no pulse. I wasn't breathing. And she just freaked. And then I opened an eye and winked at her and I said, gotcha. I love doing stuff like that. Because at that moment is when people have an epiphany. And you know what happens? They start laughing at this thing that they've done nothing but worry about for years. If you think of the amount of things that I read last night, of you guys listing how you can make yourselves feel bad, it was like a dictionary of self-torture. Here, There are people feeling guilty about things. I read on there, some of you feel guilty about things that happened with people who are no longer alive, right? Now, that's real useful. You know, I mean, if they were still alive, you could go back and apologize. You know, if that would probably not make a difference, they probably don't even remember, you know. But odds are, you know, you'll go back and apologize and they'll go, well, I never thought you did that. And they were unaware of the fact that you had ruined their life, you know. They thought they had a perfectly good life, but then you can come in and go, well, oh, actually your life is shit. And then I'll have more clients. But you see, the truth is as I read this manual of self-torture, it was kind of like what I'm going to call this is the class decide. Because, you know, your ability to manufacture fears, it's like, you know, it's like they wrote these nice things like, I want to unleash my creativity. Still, it had a leash on it, you know. So I imagine here's your creativity trying to burst out and you have a leash on it, holding it back, choking yourself. They even used the word choking in one of them. They said, you know, I'm choking my creativity. You can't imagine what images that brings to my mind, you know. And I do have to admit that one of you that wrote that, you know, because you're a really serious Christian, you married as a virgin, and so things didn't work out very well. So you gave up Christianity. I thought that was a good choice. I have to admit, you know, if any religion makes it so that you're not having fun having sex, it's not a good religion, you know. It's like this one guy told me I could learn all of these secrets of the universe, and all I had to do is to give up eating meat and sex. And I said, excuse me, I said, I don't mind cutting the meat out of my diet, but I'm sorry, that second one is not going to work for me. And I said, are you going to tell me that, you know, the universal energy of life that creates life is something you're not going to participate in? It's going to make you better off? That's like saying all this celibacy has been good for the Pope. He don't look so good. And he's cranky. I mean, he's telling people, don't have sex, because I can't have it. You know, and if you do have sex, don't wear a condom. You know, risk AIDS. Hello? I did a thing with advanced systems planning years ago. They brought me in and everybody was dressed the same. Everybody had the same desk. Everything had the same stuff on their desk. Everybody was drinking the same coffee out of the same kind of cup. We went into the meeting and there was a oval table with matching chairs all the way around, a yellow pad and a pencil and a pen lined up like that. And there was a water glass and matching pitchers so that everybody had their own little pitcher of water. And it was just as boring as anything could possibly be. And then they sat down and they said, okay, they said, today, they said, we have somebody who's going to observe us, Dr. Bandler. And I was sitting over on the side. They didn't let me sit at the table. It would have broken their rhythm, you know. And their problem was that advanced systems planning had not come up with any kind of a new idea in 5 years. And so they thought perhaps their brainstorming techniques were not working. And I love that word, brainstorming. Let's have a good idea. And what brainstorming means is that everybody talks and then everybody criticizes everybody, and it went around. And the more I listened to them, the reason they couldn't get anywhere is, number one, they weren't listening to each other. But number two, that, you know, that the kind of people they had doing it where like one guy would like say, well, you know, perhaps we should, you know, think of going into this new marketplace. And then somebody else would go, well, you know, everybody's going into that marketplace. It's going to be really competitive. You know, we should do something else, right? And so therefore, everything stops right at the beginning. And I listened to him talk for about 30 minutes, and it just gave me a fucking headache. They didn't come up with any new ideas. They didn't even come up with any suggestions. They came up with old ideas and defeated them immediately, and then got mad at each other for doing it. And then they began to have arguments about things they had argued about a year ago. Isn't that great? It's not bad enough you have an argument and then you go back and argue about the argument. Kind of like your internal dialogue, isn't it? Anyway, so I just took I went up and I said, can I have your yellow pad? And the man said, he said, we could get you one. And I said, no, I want yours because there's nothing on it. And, you know, some of them doodled on the pad, and somebody tried to write down the things they were going to try and cover that morning, you know, and I mean, they were all headed in different directions. And I just wrote numbers. I numbered it 1 through 13, and I gave them each a number. And I said, all I want you to do is to speak in this order. And nobody gets to talk out of turn. And somebody said, and I said, it's not your turn. And I said, you guys are executives. I'm a hoodlum. Keep that in mind. You know, you guys went to prestigious universities. I belong to the Hells Angels. If I can't beat you up myself, I can have friends here in a moment. You know, you never really retire from that club. You can always, they're always there to help you collect debts, you know, get people motivated, that sort of thing, you know. There's nothing like 40 Harleys showing up outside your door to get your attention. And these guys, I said, look, just try it. It won't hurt you. I said, you want to learn how to brainstorm? First thing you have to do is do it in the right order. So the one guy starts out and he says, you know, we really need to have some new ways of doing business in different directions. We've been talking around this and around this. And I don't think we're getting anywhere. And then the next guy said, well, that's not exactly true. Because I had the guy who object to the guy who said that everything was futile. No matter what they'd said before, he always came up with a statement that said, oh, well, we're never going to get anywhere, nothing's ever going to happen. So the guy who objected to everything, I had him object to that. And I just sequenced them out so that they went around twice and they ended up with a new idea. And they all looked at each other like, you know, they'd come for the first time. You know, it was like, wow, what's that? Jesus, look at what happened. You know, they said, I didn't know that would happen. I just did it because it felt good. Now, the thing is if just changing the sequence in which you move something can have such a profound effect, then 23 years of psychotherapy is not necessary. What's necessary is to begin to realize you can do this with anything. So try something. I want you just to sit back comfortably, but balanced. It's not enough to get out of pain. I want you to go into states where it feels good to move. Because the more you move in relationship to gravity, the better it feels. And then the more you'll be apt to move in useful ways. So when you do this, I want you to make sure your body is comfortable, that you sit back in the chair so you're nice and balanced. Because what I want you to do is I want you to go back in your mind and think of a time where you were really relaxed. If you've done some hypnosis, think of when you were in a trance. You know, but there's probably even deeper trances that you've been in just before you drop off to sleep, just before you wake up. And if you were laying in a boat on a lake just floating, staring at something, sometimes I know I went to the dentist. They don't do it here, but in the US they give you nitric oxide. And I'll tell you, that relaxes me really well. And my dentist has a wall painting of this forest that's in great detail, and you can just get lost in it. And sometimes he comes and tries to work on my mouth, and I shoo him away because I'm having too much fun. But if you close your eyes and go back and see what you saw when you're there, hear what you heard so you get back some of that relaxed feeling. Notice where it starts. Notice how it moves through your body. And then take it at the last moment, just before the good feeling would go away, pull it back to the beginning and begin to spin it around. And around, and around. And take a deep breath in and just slowly let it out. And if you have internal dialogue that's rapidly talking away inside your head, don't worry about it. Just begin to slow the voice down so it'll go, I'm not relaxing properly. I wonder if I'm relaxing properly. The answer is no. Because if you're worried about relaxation, you're not relaxing. It's just that simple. So inside your head, take the same voice and lower the tone, slow down the tempo. It can go, I'm so nervous. And if you take that tone and you slow it down and slow down the tempo, it doesn't really matter what you talk about. What matters is that you begin to take any part of your body that's feeling relaxed and pay attention to it. If there's tension in other places, forget about it. We'll get to that later. Right now, I want you to take the most relaxed place. Let your consciousness jump there. If it has to go to all the tension to find a relaxed place, you're not doing this properly. Go back. Just focus for a minute on the spinning, and then just find some place on the side of your arm, the end of your nose, behind your ears, your little toe, your big toe, the back of your knee. It doesn't matter to me. Any place that you're feeling relaxation, and let it spread. Take a deep breath and let it out slowly. It's best if you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. They taught me that doing yoga. And I don't know why it works, but it seems to help. In fact, if you breathe in through your nose and just let your consciousness spin this a little faster, and as you exhale, just concentrate and let your consciousness drop straight down your midline, down the inside of your legs, right out to your toes. And as you breathe again, let it come back to your heels and right up the back of your legs, and then right up your spine. And if you keep repeating that conscious spin along with the physical spin of relaxation, what you're going to begin to do is to build a new foundation. Because you see, it's not that you're totally relaxed all the time. Some of us have things we need to get done. We need to be wantonly motivated. The trick is to be able to head in the direction that you want to go at the moment you want to go there. If you're tense when you need to relax, it doesn't work. If you're sexually aroused at the wrong moments, it can get you in trouble. And if you're not sexually aroused at the right moments, well, it won't get you in the right kind of trouble. So the trick is to begin to realize the better you make yourself feel, the easier it'll do. Try to just think of something pleasant, just like Peter Pan. Take that happy thought and then just breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, and simply relax. Let your internal dialogue slow down, and then say the word inside your mind, soften. Think about your ears. Think about your forehead. Think about your fears moving backwards. Because if we back up at this moment in time, one of the things that you're surely going to find is that the more you let yourself unconsciously learn, the more you're going to learn this time. This is about feeling good, not just at this moment. Because at this moment, you haven't really learned to feel that good. And I know you can feel better than you do if you keep breathing and keep relaxing. It's okay. Just close your eyes and see things going up, and you'll feel yourself going down. And if you keep the spinning of the relaxation going around, then straighten it up so it's even with your midline. Let the feeling spin straight up and straight down, straight at your midline, and keep breathing in and out slowly. A few deep breaths, and then let it go shallow and deeper down. Because as you relax inside yourself, you're going to find something very simple. Now just keep relaxing and relaxing, because I want you to do something very important during lunch. I want you to begin to consider that what you put on your lists is not what's going to get you what's on your lists. That it's what you have not thought about. It's not that you need more confidence. It's that you need to have the kind of confidence that feels good. And it's not that you need to stop worrying. It's that you need to be able to have an internal voice that's positive. Because if you can have a voice that creates doubt with such certainty, then you can doubt your uncertainty and create a new kind of certainty. Because surely, as you sit here, you came here because you want to make a change. The change is a simple one. You want life to be and feel better than it did before. You want to get more done faster, easier, quicker. And you want to not hurt so much in this place and that place. But really, it's more important than just stopping hurting. You've got to be able to create wonderful feelings. Otherwise, you'll make more pain. You've got to be able to create super sounds inside your head. Things, trumpets, sighs, moans. You need to do those vowels. Ah, ee, ay, ay, ay. Oh, oh, ooh, ooh. Because when you're making sounds like that, it's really difficult to feel bad. If you look at things that are a challenge, then you go, then it's it's a struggle. I don't want you to have to struggle so much. I want you to become the kind of warrior that looks at the difficult and goes, a rare and unprecedented opportunity, so that all your resources begin to come to the forefront at the moments that you need them. If you can be confident about your uncertainty, then you can be confident about your ability to try new things and to do new things. Because if what you're doing isn't working, then you're going to have to try something else. Because if it hasn't worked for years, it won't work for the next years. So you might as well not waste your time, but begin to become soul efficient. Because you see, it's not just your heart and it's not just your mind, it's everything inside you that lets your spirit begin to fly. Your ability to let your creativity become unleashed is not enough to just unleash it. You don't want it romping around everywhere. Good heavens, it'll come up with more ways to make you feel bad. You want to be able to aim it in a direction and spin it in that direction so that the impossible becomes easily possible. For years and years and years now, people have told me the things that I do cannot be done. They said, you cannot hypnotize schizophrenics. Well, unfortunately, somebody didn't tell the schizophrenics about that. So these are people who are hallucinating, for Christ's sake. And they're telling me they can't go into a trance. They were already in a trance. So I had a client who was hallucinating babies, dead babies on hot dogs flying across the room. And a psychiatrist said, that hypnosis was not going to do this guy any good. And that you cannot hypnotize schizophrenics. Even my paranoid schizophrenic that had people coming off of the TV, they said, oh no, schizophrenics can't be hypnotized. Sick man Fraud told us so. But unfortunately, what sick man Fraud didn't know was how to be a good hypnotist. Because if you're a good hypnotist, then you can find a way for anybody. Because it's not me that hypnotizes people. I just provide the opportunity for them to begin to learn to do something inside themselves. Something that starts with just one good feeling. Because it's not that I want you to be sleepy. I want you to be giggly. I want you to find the giggle that you had when you were a child. The one that could giggle at little things. It's in there somewhere, because everything you ever learned is in there somewhere. Some of you just matured into people who were very, very good at stress. But you see, you don't need all this stress. It's not the goal in life to find out how stressed out now, because the more stress is out, the less it'll be in. Because you see, to me, it's not that you understand, it's that you overstand the situation. That you begin to realize that everything that you want for yourself is something not to worry about, but something to look at and say, because it's only getting your unconscious to grow a few new cortical pathways. In a matter of moments, instantly, what was a fear becomes something that's a curiosity. That something that you were compulsive and had to do suddenly doesn't seem like so much of a problem. But I know now that you've been here, your unconscious is close enough to hear me. It knows what I'm talking about. Most of the time, your conscious mind may hear some of it. But in the end, it's got to be your conscious and your unconscious aligned that aim in the same direction. It's soul important. Because the more that you learn to purify yourself by not wasting time on all this nonsense, the more you begin to let the voices that bother you turn the volume down. Change the tone of them. And if you have pictures inside your head that haunt you from arguments that linger from the past and all those things that you put in there, remember it's still you doing it. But it requires that inside your mind, that instead of going into the same tension you had every time this occurred, now what you have to do is to take the laughter and the relaxation and hear the same argument that bothered you for years. And as the voices start up, don't let the spinning of the bad feeling move in again. Spin it the other way. Whatever way it moves, from the right to the left, from the left to the right, back to the front or the front to the back, over the top or under the bottom, doesn't matter. As long as you do it differently, you won't feel the same way. And the more you take and start from a position where you're just a little bit more relaxed than you do normally. Because if you breathe in and just let it go down, realize it's only the beginning of the first morning. We're going to go deeper into all of these subjects. Because if you glow forth from this room, you'll be surprised at how many things will get how easy. There's something contagious about feeling good. Once it starts, it just won't stop. What do you think, Josie?
Yeah, I think you're right.
I have a tendency to be right.
Yeah, I would not agree with that.
Yeah, yes, my wife does from time to time, though. Like, she's telling me that right now I have to take her to lunch. But, you know, she's walking around out there, so it just goes to show you, if the doctors have told you anything about yourself that's bad, remember, stop and think, have you ever known doctors to be wrong about anything? And I'll tell you, the number of documented cases of doctors being wrong exceeds any other statistic you will ever find. It's just that simple. They do the best they can with what they have, but they're not trained to really use words. They don't understand how important it is to get people in the right state to heal. And they only know what they know. They don't know everything else. You know, me, I go to any doctor I can find anywhere. You know, and I get a little bit from every one of them, you know, whenever I needed it. They told me that I would not be able to use my legs again because when I was in a coma, because I was misdiagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed a diabetic. They told me I had an inner ear infection and gave me medicine that said, do not give to diabetics no matter what. And I took that medicine and proceeded to projectile vomit that afternoon in the lobby of the Waldorf Hotel while Princess Diana was giving a benefit for the Royal Ballet. And they, of course, thought, you know, because of the way I looked, they thought, oh, he's on drugs, he's drunk or something. But, you know, I was just headed into a coma, that's all. Unfortunately, I made it back to the United States, to my own house, and got up in the morning and said, I don't feel very good. I need to go to the doctor. And my wife said, well, you can go tomorrow. You have stuff to do today. And I said, I don't think so. This doesn't feel good. And I ended up calling my son, who came over and got me. And by the time they got me to the doctor, the doctor said, take him to the hospital, for Christ's sake, you know. I said, he's not even conscious. They carried me in. They're used to me not having any problems. But the medicine had poisoned me. And what happened is I ended up getting shooting pains up and down my legs. My feet went completely numb, and I lost my sense of balance. I was afraid to get anywhere near a window because everything felt like it was spinning all the time. And but when the doctor came in and said, well, you know, he said, you're going to have to get used to this, you know, this kind of damage. You know, if we'd have caught this sooner, yeah, right, if we'd have caught it sooner, then, you know, you wouldn't have these problems, you know. But, you know, they said you should get medical checkups more often. And I'd had about 20 that year, went to all these fancy places. But since I was Richard Bandler, they assumed I would have a rare disease. Couldn't have something common. So they didn't look at anything normal, right? They forgot my body is just like everybody else's. They started asking me, have you been to strange places? And I had to answer, yes, I've been to some mighty strange places. You know, of course, they were talking on the earth. I wasn't even talking about that. I was just talking about in my mind. But, you know, they said when they found out that I'd been to the Himalayas and I'd been to India and I'd been to all of these places, they started checking for weird diseases and going through things on computers and sucked more blood out of me than you could possibly imagine. Every 2 hours they were coming in, taking it, so we need more blood. And I go, that's okay, I'm not using it right now. And then finally, one doctor came in. He's just a family practitioner. He's our family doctor. Came in and he went. He said he's a diabetic. He said, did it just with smell? He said, can't you smell how sweet it is? It's all that sugar coming out, you know, because you can't put anything, no water, no sugar, no nothing will go into your cells. Nothing will pass through the cell walls because you don't have any insulin. And the reason you don't have insulin is because your body attacked itself. Right? And my body decided the beta cells in my pancreas were a bad thing. Went in and knocked them off. And I've managed to grow them back, but it keeps knocking them off again. I'm going to figure this out, though. I have a new plan. I've decided now that what I'm going to do is, instead of injecting insulin, I'm going to snort it. And, well, there's a reason for that. You know, when you eat liver, your body doesn't reject it. But yet, when they transplant a liver, your body will reject it. And they have to give you special drugs. And what's the difference? because you can smell the liver. That's why your nose is over your mouth instead of over your butt. Because otherwise you would know what you ate, not what's going in. And smelling food is what makes it so that your body doesn't reject things. And that's why one of the reasons that we've had so much success working with allergies is that we've taught people to become more sensitive about smell. Because we discovered that people with a lot of allergies don't have a really good sense of smell. And if you get people to really smell things, it adjusts the whole system so that it doesn't reject it. And the same thing is true. So my theory is that I can actually reverse the immune thing. It's genetic, but then I don't believe that genetics is everything. The doctor said to me, he said, well, he said, you're going to have to accept this because it's genetic. And I said, look, genetically I'm not very smart, but I did pretty well anyway. And I said, and genetically I'm not a big, strong guy, but I can still kick your ass. And I may not be able to walk well, but I'll bet I can hurt you just the same. But here 3 years later, and I walk fine, my balance is fine, all of those things, but I just don't go along with it because I know lots of times people have wrong. People told me all kinds of things that are wrong my whole life. But here we were, and I was doing this thing with reality strategies, where I try to teach people, when I'm teaching people about how to work with schizophrenics, I want them to know what schizophrenics do. So in essence, I dissemble their reality strategies and show them how tenuous it can be, that your ability to know what really happened and what didn't happen. These are things that we have strategies that we keep so that we can tell what's shared reality. Unfortunately, sometimes we make real things that we don't need to have be real. We build realities and start acting as if, processes are things. People say, I have frustration, as if it's something you can carry around with you. I got 3 pounds of frustration, somebody came in once and they said, I have depression. And I said, well, pass it over, And they said to me, well, what do you mean? And I said, look, you said you have depression. I want some. I've been happy for far too long. I tell you what, I'll trade you 10 pounds of happiness for 10 pounds of depression. See, because I want to take the depression in the backyard and make a swimming pool out of it. And they looked at me and they said, are you nuts? And I said, I'm not the one that says I have depression. One does depressing things. They think about things and make them feel bad. Because you can think about things. Think about these people that jump out of airplanes. They go, oh boy, a chance to jump out of an airplane. Think about how many people go fishing for fun. I mean, you take string, right, and you put bait on it, or not, and you drag it behind a boat, right, through the ocean yet. You're out on the ocean on this boat, dragging string behind you in hopes that the fish can find it, right? Now, if the fish hear the boat motor go by and they see this little fish chasing the boat, every once in a while they'll bite onto it, but I found that a lot of the rules of fishing, just if you break them, it's a lot easier. That, for example, that reeling the fish thing in, I didn't like that at all. They took me deep sea fishing when I was in Hawaii, and they in search of, the great wild marlin. And we were going along, and it was nice in the sun. A little motor was going by. I don't get in the sun that much. I heard there's a hole in the sky. But, I had like, 150 proof suntan oil all over me. Plus I had clothes still on, and I brought my own little fan and air conditioner. And we're going along in the ocean, and it's beautiful, and everything was nice. And suddenly the line goes, bzzz, like that. And I went, what the fuck is that? And the guy goes, he goes, start to reel it. And I went, oh, okay. And I grabbed a hold of that thing and started going like this. And to begin with, I'm left-handed. And this thing is on the right-hand side. So it was like really a lot of work. And I'm sitting there doing this, and he goes, let it out. He goes, now pull it all the way up like this. And when I pulled it up, this fish jumped up into the sky, looked straight down the string, and it had an eye this fucking big, right? And it looked down at me, and I pulled a knife out of my pocket and went like this. And they all went, what? You let the fish go? I said, are you kidding? The fucking thing was bigger than I was. I said, it had a mean look in it. It was not going to come to a good thing, It could just swim here. There's a spike on the front of its face like that. It could kill me or something. And he said, well, he said, do you know how much that fish is worth? And I said, probably to the fish, it's worth a lot. I said, but I don't tell you that. I couldn't eat 700 pounds of fish. So I'm certainly not going to take it home and put it in the freezer. And the guy said, well, he said, we sell it to restaurants. And I said, well, isn't that nice? I said, but you'll have to catch your own fish. I'm the one that paid to go out here for the day of fishing. I said, if I choose to cut the thing loose. And I said, and besides, it's too much work to get them in the boat. I said, they put up too much of a fight. And he said, that's the fun part of it. And I went, excuse me? I said, the fun part is the struggle for 3 hours to wind the fish in and wear it out. I said, I know a much faster way to do this. So I went down and I opened a little bag I had and I came back up. I said, let's do it again. I said, you want to see the fish give in quickly? No problem. Stun dart. Carried them because I didn't like killing the wild boar, but I liked hunting them. So I just put them to sleep for a while. Go up and put little signs on them like, don't shoot this. Because here these pigs are running around out there but the nice thing about boar is that they make a pretty even fight. These people, they hunt boar. The boar will attack you out of the bushes and just kick the shit out of you because they're not like the little tiny pigs, that you see here. These are like big motherfuckers with tusks like that. And they go like that, and they run, and they're constantly beating the shit out of people. They're half the size of a big bull, and these people, they go and hunt them. They have like 12 dogs, and, out of that, 6 of them get killed while, they try to get a clean shot at it, whatever that means. And the guys go hunting didn't hunt with a gun, though. He hunted with a knife. Hunted boar with a knife. It's a big Hawaiian guy, and he thought that was the fun. He'd go up wind of them, and he'd sneak up to them, and then suddenly he'd make this noise, and when they turned around, he'd grab the tusk, pull it back, and slit their throat. And I told him, I said, if you do that, you'll have no boar to hunt. And he said, well, I live off of the meat. And I said, I said, let me introduce you to something. I took him to the supermarket. Showed him, there's a whole big fucking thing of meat here. I said, you don't have to go out and kill things in the wild. I said, look at here, isn't this wonderful? It's all packaged and sliced and everything. And then I said, look at this fish right here. It's already here. You don't have to go out and do this stuff. Sit out there in the sun for 12 hours waiting for the fish to find the hook. But there are some people that find this thrilling. Think about this. Do you know how many people play golf? Excuse me. And they're thrilled about it. They love this. And they go out there and they take these little things and whack a little ball way far away into a little hole, And, it's like, there's a kind of a good joke that Lenny told me, I think. Wasn't it you that told me, what do you call, 200 white guys chasing a black guy 100 years ago? The Ku Klux Klan. And what do you call it now when 200 white guys chase a black guy? The PGA. See, it's funny how things flip around like that, isn't it? Now, anyway, I wanted to back up a little bit. See, make better decisions on what's right rather than what other people think. See how specific those sound? Okay, that's a hint. Some of you just took some of these. Look at this one here. It's a thick booklet, right? And I like it. It has here symptom list. Now, can you imagine if somebody thinks about it this much? And I started reading it. I started having all these symptoms. I like that. I feel I'm about to have a panic attack. And I went, ah! Just reading it scared the crap out of me. For example, how do you have a panic attack? Yeah, panic attack. How do you have one? If I wanted to have a panic attack, what would I have to do? Yep, that's what you have to do. I love that. Where were these psychologists for all these years? Right here, I go, how do you have a panic attack? And he goes, let me ask you, if I wanted to make a panic attack, what would I have to do? I know it sounds crazy, but you see, let's say you could get somebody to do your problems for you for a whole day. So you could have a day off from all of your problems. But the only thing you had to do is you had to hire somebody who could do it for you. So I came from the Temporary Insanity Agency, and I came in. And so if I'm going to have a panic attack, how do I do it? What do I have to do to have a panic attack?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever had one, but I have had the feeling that I'm about to get one.
But you never actually had the panic attack. You just have a feeling you're going to have one, and then you don't have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Talk about a procrastinator, huh? If you're going to procrastinate on something, that's probably a really good thing to procrastinate on. How do you know it's a panic attack if you just never have one? This feeling might be that you're about to have an idea that bursts into total creativity. You know, you might be the next Einstein and discover the way to exceed the speed of light. Probably not, though, huh? What do you do to make this, though? Even if you don't have the full panic attack, you bought the wholesale model. So how do you do it? You keep making pictures. That's my guess. So can you see the pictures?
No, I just have a feeling that I don't know what to do and I can't stop doing something.
Okay, how do you know to have the feeling that you don't know what to do? You know, sometimes you don't know what to do, and then you either have to ask or you have to learn, or you have to do what I do. Anything unexpected. You can expect that from me. See, so, okay, I have an intuition, actually. It's not an intuition, it's an observation. That if you go back and think of the last time you had one of these feelings that you don't like, okay, go back and remember where you were. See what you saw at the time, right? Okay, now double the size of the image. So you begin to get the feeling back. Where does it start? The feeling starts in the back of your spine? Okay, well, it's only one way to know it. It's your body. I don't do things like this if I can help it, you know. I have panic attacks when I step out in England and I forget to look the right way, you know, and suddenly I realize there's a bus barreling towards me. Then I have a panic attack. Of course, when I have panic attacks, I don't stand like a deer in headlights. I run like hell. I've discovered a long time ago that if you're stationary in positions of danger, something will hit you. A person, a fist, you know, a hairbrush, could be anything. And I've been hit with so many things that I've gotten really good at ducking. Now, the thing is that so you're in a situation where you don't know what to do. Okay, how do you know you don't know what to do? Let's see. What could that be?
Well, I'm trying hard to figure out what to do.
Okay, and when you try to figure out what to do you try to figure it out with words or pictures? Or do you just go back and forth?
I'm not sure about that.
You're not sure about that? Well, okay, well, go back and think about the last time you did it. Because pretty much everything on your list sounded very, very similar. See, if you can learn to undo one of these things, it's like unlocking the key. Because you'll discover that, you know, lots of the stuff that's on the list. That's why I have you make the list, is because when I look at it, I discover that, you know, it may sound like a list of different things to you, but it always sounds like just one thing to me. You know, sometimes maybe two, but when I go down, I discover that, you know, like somebody put on there, as they said, you know, things they would be better off without, you know, after they put down the things they would like unlimited wealth, but, you know, I'm sorry I don't do that. You have to do that one on your own. And like this one here says, I wish I felt more confident more of the time. Right? Well, the thing is they seem pretty sure about that. They seem confident about the fact that they're not confident. See, if you were really an uncertain person, you would be unsure about your uncertainty. You would have doubts about whether you were really uncertain or not, if you know what I mean. But if you have so much certainty about your doubts, then it seems to me that you know what the feeling of certainty is. Now, the time to be uncertain is when you don't know what's going on, because there are some times that you don't know what to do. But it doesn't mean that it has to feel bad. That means that you might learn something new. You know, it's always amazed me that people would actually take some of the drugs they do. I had a client that shot PCP and methadone together. And I was always amazed when he told me that. I went, "You what?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm addicted." I said, I can believe that. But as if one of those drugs wasn't enough. PCP, which gets you so wound up you can lift a car, you know. And methadone, which gets you so wired that, you know, you'll want to lift 5 cars. And guess what? after prolonged use of this, he began to hallucinate. Surprise, surprise. He looked me straight in the eye and he said, well, he said, I thought I was being chased by dragons through the desert. And you could see his car was totally wrecked up. You know, he had a nice BMW, but it was covered with sand and the wheels were all bent. And I mean, you know, the things, he looked like he rammed into everything in sight, you know. And he was pretty wealthy, but not smart. See, he's one of those people that got a lot of money and said, well, now what should I do with all that spare time? I think I'll take drugs and make myself crazy. But anybody who takes that much drugs and then is surprised they hallucinate falls into the same decision maker as the person who doesn't drink, who drinks lots of champagne at a wedding and wakes up and wonders why they have a hangover. I heard all the time people are always going, God, I've got such a hangover. I went to a wedding last night. You know, I don't think I drank that much. That much. As soon as you have to worry about whether you drank that much, it's too much. See, most people don't realize if when you drink alcohol, if you drink a glass of water between each thing of alcohol, you have a whole glass of water. Number one, it'll keep your liver clean. But number two, it makes it so you have to make a decision. Because when things get where they're running automatically, where your own consciousness is not in your consciousness, that you don't think you hear internal voices, can you recite the alphabet inside your head? Well, that's an internal voice, isn't it? You guess so? What would you like to call it? Can't call it an external voice. You know, it's not a demon possessing you, is it? The demon of the alphabet. A, B, C, D, E, ha, 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 and F, my favorite. You know, what the hell is going on in there? So you can do that, so you can hear that. All right. So if you're going to know that you don't know how to do something, don't you have to inform yourself? First, you have to try to figure out how to do it. When I asked you that, do you see your own internal images? Can you make pictures of things inside your head? Like if I'm going to ask you to do something very, very complicated. Okay, what's the kind of thing where you get anxiety because you don't know what to do? No. You have no idea how to make anxiety.
Right now.
Not right now. Okay. Think about the last time that you had a pre-anxiety attack. Okay. If you think about it now, right, now take the picture and double it in size. Okay. Now, the picture you just doubled in size is an internal image. Okay. When you look at that image, right, in that situation, you did not know what to do. Especially if you freeze up. You know, it's like a deer in headlight. You know, it's where the deer makes the worst decision of its life. It goes, look at the bright lights rushing towards us. Hold very, very still. Maybe they'll go around us on either side. It's just not a good idea. I know I ran into a deer once in a sports car, and the deer won. I came out of the sports car, through the windshield, and slid 150 yards on concrete, right? And some bright young man came up and looked at me and said, "Are you hurt?" My leg was sticking out through my pants, just the bone, however. And he said to me, "Am I hurt?" And I responded as any normal person would. I reached up and grabbed him by the throat and smacked his head against the concrete and said, "Are you hurt?" And he went, "Ah, ah, ah." So I smacked him again, and finally he nodded yes, and I said, "I think it's time to call me an ambulance before you pass out." Now, so you saw the internal picture inside your head. Okay. Now, in that situation, you did not know what to do, right? Okay. Now, at what point did you know that you didn't know what to do? How did you inform yourself of that? I'll make a guess. You probably told yourself. See, there aren't that many choices. You got pictures, you got sounds. But in order to make the feeling that's in your spine, say, if you listen to the internal voice, because see, my guess is it wasn't like calm and cool James Bond voice. It didn't say, you know, everything is out of control. It didn't go, "Oh dear God, I'm stuck. I just don't know what to do." Probably it had intonation that's a little more frightening than that. Don't you think? Probably. Okay, well, so the trick is that if you begin to think of, if you can't hear, see, you said like you don't think you have internal voices. Well, it turns out you do. You can do the alphabet, but the question is, what other tonalities can you do? By the way, when you hear internal voices telling you things, do you know where they come from? Right, left, front, back? Doesn't have any, but he knows where they come from. Man after my own heart. Right, so it comes from back here. On the right-hand side? Right? Okay, now when you hear the voices on those sides, is that the voice which creates in you things like indecision, procrastination, lack of certainty? Certainly. What does it sound like?
Well, if I'm playing with it now with the alphabet, then it sounds like my very own voice.
Yeah. Okay, when you're doing it with the alphabet.
When I'm in that situation, when I can't make up my mind or don't know what to do, then
But then everything goes by really fast then.
I'm not aware of anything.
You're not aware of anything.
I'm not aware of any voice or any tone of voice.
Or any pictures?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so what's in the pictures? What kind of picture would I have to make to get that feeling in the back of my spine? Can't do it? Can't figure out how to do it? Don't know what to do?
Oh, I have a strategy for getting there, but that takes, days of hard work and
Days of hard work to be able to have anxiety? But there's a lot faster ways to do it. I mean, why should you wait around for days and days and days to have anxiety? You can do it just in a minute. I can tell you some of the things some of my clients did. Some of them could scare themselves in a cold second. They told me about it. It scared me and everybody in the audience listening. Some people have really spooky strategies. There was a PhD, licensed psychologist at the hospital, who gave people electric shock treatment to help them to straighten their minds out. Excuse me, but that strikes me as something that you do just to get information out of prisoners. That this is not a way to begin to straighten somebody's mind out by scrambling it. The thing is that you have to do something where you start it in a different way. For example, once you begin to build up on any kind of indecision, okay, in order to begin to become clear with decision, you have to know how you understand. So if you think of something that you understand, okay, in your mind, something that you understand clearly. Okay, now, where is the picture? Okay, now, where is the picture when you're uncertain? For somebody who doesn't talk to yourself, you do an awful lot of it. Can you hear your internal dialogue? What's between the pictures?
between the pictures.
Yeah, because you were making different pictures, and in between it, there was a space. Listen. See, it'll make it better decisions if you can hear your own internal processes. See, the more you can pay attention to what you're doing, the more you can influence it. See, if things are outside of your consciousness, which they're supposed to be, you're not supposed to have to figure out how to do a handshake. So if every time I go like this, his hand comes up automatically, right? And if you had to go, what does that hand mean out there? Right? And you go, oh yes, I'm supposed to lift my hand and shake it. I remember. And then you go, well, let's see, how do I lift a hand? And you had to remember how to fire all those neurons. It would be too hard. So we build quick neural cortical pathways that just goes trigger, fire. And if you're in certain situations, you have a way of understanding that leads successfully. We go, yes, I understand. Okay, which to me is never enough. I'm always greedy. I always go, why under anything? I like excess. It's just my nature. But you see, if you don't have those processes go by quickly and it doesn't lead you to where you need to go, then the thing is the first thing you got to do is to bring it into consciousness a little more, slow it down. See, if you begin to think about all the different things that were on the list that you gave me, you're going to find inside of all of those, it has something to do with making decisions. That all of those things are things where you have not decided the way you decide best. It's not that you don't have a good decision strategy. It's that you don't use it all the time. That if you stop, close your eyes for a minute, and go inside and begin to think of the places where you're really successful at making decisions. You've made decisions in the past, they were the right decision, they've stayed the right decision, and you're satisfied with them. Now, you know what that feels like, how it moves through your body. Take the feeling and begin to move it in a circle. Literally let it spin around until you begin to bathe yourself in it. And hold the feeling constant and begin to think about the things where you're not making good decisions, where you decide you don't know. Well, the truth is you don't know what you know. If you don't even know about your internal dialogue, you may know all kinds of things. Because everything you've ever experienced in your entire lifetime is still there. It's still available. Your ability to put together new pieces and new directions is still there. The more you begin to concentrate on how to put those pieces together, the easier it's going to be for you. So if you take the feeling and you spin it around and you start to think of where the difficult situations are and begin to take the feeling of making good decisions and you know where the image is supposed to go, if you begin to put the image in the place where good decisions go inside your mind, you're going to find that you can start by making a decision to make better decisions. Because once you do that, you can use the talent that you already have. There isn't anybody in this room that hasn't made good decisions. But you see, the process by which you make good decisions is not necessarily the process by which you make all decisions. And you see, everybody I know who's had ongoing problems with things, heroin addicts get off of heroin and they go right back on because they look at it and they go, well, I won't get hooked this time. How could they possibly believe that? But they don't think about what's going to happen down the road. They only think about the short run. They don't think and make it a full movie. They see a slide inside their mind. And if the slide isn't a clear picture, then they might not act on it. But if it's clear, they see the slide of just the drug of choice that they take. Some people, when they see a big mansion, they go, I want that. But they haven't really put themselves inside the mansion, walked around, lived in it in their mind. They look at it from the outside. And from the outside is not a very good idea. Lots of architects plan buildings by looking at them from the sky and from the outside. Those will always be unpleasant places to be in. The really good architects go inside the building and walk around, use the elevators, stay in the rooms, find out how long it is to walk places and whether or not they're making it so confusing, or whether or not some of these places make it so that no matter where you have a room, the elevator is always far away. It's totally ridiculous. In the US, they have hotels that are hollow in the center so that every noise from the lobby goes into every single room, because the architect only did it visually, didn't do it auditorily. It requires all of your systems inside your mind. If you can hear the alphabet inside your mind, then perhaps it's time that you begin to hear what it is and how it is that you say things to yourself. Even if it's, oh shit. Because, everybody has that experience. The guy who jumps out of the airplane with the parachute and realizes he left it in the plane, he's going to say, oh shit, but probably only once. The guy who is fishing for that great marlin and discovers that he has a hammerhead shark on the other end of the line, and they will attack the boat. They're the meanest things you've ever seen. And they come up right up out of the water. I was fishing in a boat, and the thing came up and bit the propeller. It tore it to shreds, but it actually bent the propeller so that we had to paddle this big, $500,000 boat back to shore because this thing bit the propellers and all of its bones got twisted. It may have died, but it killed the boat too. And I just kept thinking if this thing had come up over the edge of the boat and gotten in there, there'd have been a lot of dead people. It had teeth the size of my foot. And it had a nasty look on its face too. It was really pissed off, because it said, oh, a fish, and it bit it, and here was this stupid line there. And where most fish pull and run away, this thing went straight for the boat. Didn't even hesitate. Straight across the water, right up, and it was going to kill us all. Looked up out of the water, both eyes raised, and there's big teeth out there. And I know inside of my head, I heard the voice say, oh, shit, right, like that. And I handed the fishing pole to somebody else right away. I said, here, hold this for me. I got to go pee. And I was downstairs in the boat. I got a flare, and I came up with the flare because if it was going to open its mouth, I was going to give it something to smoke. Now, if you can take the feeling that you have and start at the base of your spine, right? You know how you make good decisions. You know what it feels like. But start at the bottom of your spine and let the feeling come up your spine. And keep breathing. None of you in here breathe. If you don't breathe, you'll die. Either that or you start hallucinating. People think hallucinating isn't real. It's quite real. You begin to think that things that aren't there are. Everybody has their own demons and their own boogeymen. And it's only through learning to use your brain in a new direction that you're going to be able to make better decisions. And you'll find that in terms of becoming successful, if you make decisions, see, people say they have fear of failure. Well, why bother? That's my policy. If you make an absolute decision, every one of you in here has made a decision at some time in your life that you have stuck to. It's just absolute and utterly the case. For example, some of you have been swimming, you dove under the water, and you stayed down a little too long. And you made a decision you would never fucking do that again. Because in order to get to the top, you had to struggle, and you were lucky. Some of you made it to the top of the water and got that breath. Some of you were like me and got just close to the top of the water and took a deep breath and ended up puking their guts out by the side of the pool. And there's nothing better than puking up chlorine. Hydrochloric acid and chlorine happen to make an interesting combination, which it makes it so that not only do you vomit, but it's jet propelled. I have a whole history of vomiting in the wrong place. I'm a little accident prone. The explosions were not my fault, though. I was in chemistry class in high school, and I realized that consciously, we have negation. We know what not means. But unconsciously, you don't. When I say don't think of blue, what's the first thing that comes into your mind? So if I say don't think about not stopping yourself from doing the things you want to do by being able to make the same kind of a commitment. See, when you think about things like, do you think breathing is good? You don't have to answer out loud. I bet you hear a voice then, don't you? Yes. That's okay. You don't have to be embarrassed by it. Everybody has internal dialogue. And it's a good thing. I know in Gestalt therapy they said having internal dialogue is bad. And all these people who teach you to meditate say having internal dialogue is bad. It's not bad to have it. It's bad to have it out of control. It doesn't matter whether it talks too much or it doesn't say anything that you can hear. If it goes, oh shit, it's still the same thing. It's still going to influence your body. There's an overlap between the auditory cortex and the kinesthetic cortex. So your feelings are made 40% out of sound. There's also an overlap between the visual cortex and the kinesthetic cortex, about the same, about 40%. So that's why you can see things and they make you feel things. So when you're driving along and suddenly you notice something is flying at your car, you get a rush of adrenaline. You're supposed to. It's supposed to make it so that instead of freezing, you drive out of the way of the object that's flying. Gives you a little extra boost. Things should go into slow motion. You see, if you let the feeling that you have now just stop, you'll be not making the kind of decision I'm talking about. That's right.